So today we are in my car. It's not the coolest and not the fastest, but come on, I'm a student, I have to work with what I got. Back to topic. We are in my car because I like to have a little bit more wood in here. Oh, perfect! Problem solved. Thanks for watching. No, that's not the point. I like to rebuild some plastic parts in this car out of wood. And I want to start with the shifting knob. At first I'll clean up the car and disassemble these parts to get to know what I have to build. So the first thing to do is to disassemble the parts around the shifting knob. This, by the way, is just a remote control of an additional speaker that I installed a while ago. Because this is a car with automatic transmission and the shifting knob moves just in one straight way, there is this little knob underneath the shifting knob, which is connected to this little white hook. This I have to pull off. And now I should be able to just pull off the whole shifting knob. This trigger in the shifting knob makes the rebuild a little difficult. I was hoping that the springs were not in the shifting knob but down here, but that's unfortunately not the case. Let's talk about the design first. I prefer a simple bar that comes down into a slot where it can move in, with a round shifting knob on top. But as I already told you, we need this little button to be able to shift. As you already know, pulling this trigger lifts the little white plastic part. This is necessary to be able to shift between the different gears. Yeah, you're probably right. I could just leave this white plastic part out of my car, so I don't have to build a trigger into the shifting knob. But I really don't want to spread every single gear of my car over the whole highway by accidentally pushing the shifting knob to the front into the reverse gear and then maybe hitting other cars with the gear of my car and cause a pile up like in a scene in the Fast and the Furious. So I think I prefer to keep the white part in the car and build a mechanism to somehow pull it up. So the plan is to connect the shifting knob to the wooden bar with just a spring. So by pulling the shifting knob up, you pull this plastic knob up. I started out with a piece of beechwood rod. As this is end grain, I drilled the 15mm hole for the lever in several steps. The hole had to be a little bit offset from the middle to have enough space at the other side for the connection of the gear knob and the lower plastic part. This lever has a little nose over here. I have two options to go to be able to slide this wooden piece over the lever. The first is to remove this little nose, so I just need the basic hole to be able to slide it over. The second is to make a little groove into the wood over here, where this little nose fits into. I'll try to go with the second option because I don't want to change anything at the original parts of the car. After a lot of chisel work and filing, it fits over the lever in the car. And I did the same at the other side to create some space for the lower plastic part. So I have this part close to fit, but this white part is still a little too snug in there. And I also almost broke through the wall here. Here you can see that. So I decided to remake this part. I'll make it with a diameter of 32mm instead of 30mm, but at the top I still have to have 30mm because I don't have a drill bit with 32mm to get the right hole into the shifting knob, so it will be a little bit conical. Unfortunately, just in this moment I didn't have laying around a leftover piece that's 30mm at one end and 32 at the other in the right length, so I had to bring out my lathe and make one. I took this as an opportunity to use a piece of this Japanese cherry. Well, at least I think it's Japanese cherry, I'm not quite sure. It was Actually not a tree, more like a bush that we cut down in the garden of my grandma, and she told me that this is Japanese cherry. What's a little bit confusing about this is that I already made some other things out of this wood that came out in a completely different color than this leather did. So if any one of you knows better what kind of wood this is, please let me know in the comments. Now I first made the knob till the glue up, so this can dry while I make the holes in the leather again. One tiny little aspect about the laser of my Capex I really appreciate is that I don't have to mark the workpiece. So I just line the tape measure or folding rule up with the laser, clamp it down and cut it off. So that saves me a lot of time, especially in searching for the pencil. I wanted to make the knob out of very hard wood to be able to sand it extremely smooth. As this is one of the most touched parts in the car, I wanted to be as comfortable as possible to touch. So I used a piece of oak that I had left over and purple heart. Purple heart, in my experience, is still harder than oak. I wanted to sandwich the purple heart in between the oak, so I had to slice up the oak in two halves. Because I didn't want to run these small parts through the planer to get plain surfaces, I just sanded them at the disc sander. Here I'm marking the center for the 15mm hole. The distance to the edge is pretty easy to eyeball with a Forstner bit. Cause my drill press has just a capacity of 80mm in depth, I have to finish this hole by hand with a cordless drill. But the already 80mm depth hole gives me enough guidance to drill the rest of it straight too. And of course there's the chisel and file work again. But then it just falls down with no resistance. I could do that the whole day. So the next step is to drill a hole through the whole part for the connecting rod that connects the shifting knob and the little plastic part. I think I'm gonna use a spoke from a bicycle wheel, but at first I'll get the clamps off of the sandwich. So I had the choice between these two drill bits to drill that hole. They are both 6mm in diameter. The left one has two flutes, like most drill bits for wood have. The right one has just one flute. Because of just one flute, this drill bit is less flexible than the other one is. But if you have a closer look from behind, this drill bit looks much bigger than this one. This one is 5.8mm in the back and about 6mm in the front, like I would expect it. This one is just about 5mm in the back, but about 6mm in the front. You can maybe see the little step it makes over here, where it gets a little smaller. This is probably to reduce the friction at the whole body when it is in a deep hole, so all the forces from the drill in behind get up to the front of the drill bit. But in my case this can cause problems, because if I start the hole straight I still have a little bit play, so I could get off the track. With this drill bit I don't have this problem, so if I start straight, I should go straight down, but if there's a hard spot in the wood, because of the flex of the drill bit, it also can get off the track. So I really don't know which to use. But I'll start with a shorter drill bit and drill as far as I get with this one, and then I'll get over to one of these. So to check if my workpiece is parallel to the drill bit, I look at it so that the edge of my workpiece is aligned with the stand of my drill press. And if these lines up, the workpiece should be parallel to the drill bit. Yes, you're right, that's just in one direction. If you don't trust your vise 99.9% for squareness, turn it around by 90 degrees and repeat the process to make sure it's parallel to the drill bit in every direction. So I think I'll first try it with this drill bit, as I have a straight start of the hole, and try to feel if there comes a harder spot. So then I still could switch to the other drill bit. I also had a look at the piece of wood if there are any branches. This one is straight in that line, but it's already in the hole. So this hole that I've made with a chisel and the one I want to drill should meet somewhere over here above this branch. Phew, this gets toasty. This probably would have been less hot because of the wider tip. There it is. The next thing to do is to get the knob out of this sandwich. But at first I want to drill the hole for this main shaft into it. With this hole I then can also hold it to the lathe. So as this surface isn't really flat, I probably don't reach the center with the tip of the drill bit before the cutting edges reach the wood. So it would be pretty difficult to keep the drill bit centered in the middle while starting the hole. But with this drill bit, oh, the tip is actually already long enough for this job. But if it wasn't long enough, you could change the tip like this and put in a longer one or even a drill itself. These are all tapered and just hold in the hole by friction. But as the normal tip is long enough, I'll keep this one. To make the turning a little bit easier, I knocked off the corners first. I don't want to get deep into the turning now, but to turn wood that is this hard, especially the end grain, is not fun. To keep the tools sharp is one very important key to success. I sneaked up to the right form in many steps by always taking it into my hand and feeling where the shape still needs to be changed to get a nice comfortable shape for my hand. With this very hard wood you have to be aware of a lot of sanding, but if you do that lot of sanding you could reach a really spectacular finish. And I wipe some oil onto the wood. I thought I had a plan in the beginning how to connect all the parts later on, but that turned out to not work. So now, after a lot of thinking, I have a new plan. Let me tell this to you. The first thing that I have to do is to get this spring into the shaft and connect it somehow to the shaft and to the knob in the top. And the second thing I have to do is to make a connecting rod that connects the white plastic part from the car to the shifting knob. What makes it difficult is to be able to mount all the parts. The first plan in theory works fine, but if you try to assemble these parts you find a lot of problems. For example, if you want to clip in the connecting rod into the plastic part. This would be very difficult while they are in the wooden lever. And it would be even worse if you try to disassemble these later on if you want to change something. Or the spring, same problem here. So the plan is to make a layer in between the shaft and the knob. This layer should then be connected to the spring and also to the spoke from beneath. When all this is assembled, then I should be able to just screw the knob onto this layer. The layer in between will be just a simple washer with an additional hole for the spoke. And the hole for the spring needs to be drilled. And it fits in but can't fall all the way through because of the bolt in the back. So I finally managed to get this thing to work. This is connected with the spoke of the bicycle, and this is connected to a spring that's in here. It has a little bit of preload, so it is snug to the shaft. And I'm turning a little plate with a nut insert to be glued into the gear knob, so I'm able to screw it onto the shaft. So now the moment of truth. So you can maybe see that the white piece is a little too high now. I can adjust the depth of this white part just by turning this little knob in the top. So it screws in and out, so it gets longer or shorter, so the white part gets higher or lower. Screwing the knob back in place. To get further, I have to pull that up. So that's it for the gear knob. There's still this big hole underneath, but I'll care about that in the future, maybe in another video. This took me a lot longer than I thought in the beginning, but I think it turned out pretty cool, and I really like the size and form of it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.